Operators are something we use all the time in JavaScript, and in fact, we've already used some of them already during this course. You will notice for this video I'm already in the correct file, which is lesson number 9, operators, assignment and comparison, and also open this up inside the browser. Scrolling down to our script section, we already have some simple variables already set up, and you'll notice the common thing between all 4 of these variables is they all use the equals operator. This is the assignment operator because we assign the value on the right to the variable name over on the left. But there are other assignment operators too, which you can see up here from this comment. We've looked at this equals, so let's now move on to this plus equals symbol. Let's say we wanted to add together the value of number 1 and also the value of number 2 and then store the newly returned value. Well, we could do it like this, and we'll call this the new number. Set this equal to the value of number 1 plus number 2. And if you scroll down a little bit further, we have this get element by ID, which is already set up, which is just this level 1 heading up at the top. And what we're going to do here is output the value of new number. So add this into here, give this a save, and now we can refresh the browser and we see this newly returned value of 20, which is the 15 and the 5 added together. So there's no surprises with this one. But JavaScript also provides us with some shorter ways of doing this. Rather than adding the number 1 and the number 2 variables together and then assigning this to a variable, we can instead do it like this. We can remove or comment out this line with the 2 forward slashes. Also, if you are using Visual Studio Code on a Mac, you can use command and forward slash, and this will toggle this automatically. If you're using Windows, this will be control with forward slash, and this will do exactly the same. So instead, a shorter option, if you wanted to amend the number 1 variable or update this, we can use the plus equals operator and then pass in number 2. So what this will do, it will add both of these numbers together and assign the new value to the variable over on the left. So both of these same lines will still come with the same result of 20. The difference being the top one is being stored inside a new variable and the bottom one is updating this existing one. We can check this by updating this to be number 1. Save and refresh, and we still see the same value of 20. Also, up at the top with our variables, we have this forename and this surname. If we wanted to display the full name on the screen, we may come up with something like this. First of all, we could set the forename, and then using Command or Control C to copy, and then Command or Control V to paste, we can then also output the value of surname. So save this, and over to the browser, we'll only see the value of our surname. This approach doesn't work because the surname is last in our code and therefore it overrides the forename. So instead, what we can do is make use of the plus equals operator to add this to our element rather than replace the existing one. Now if we save this and refresh, we see the value of both of our variables. And we could also add an empty space between each one of these words using some of the techniques which we've used in the past. Pass in an empty string with a space, and then the plus operator to add this just before our surname. Save this file, and now we have a space between our 2 variable names. So this is adding values and then reassigning the new value. But we can also do the opposite with subtraction. We can see this just up here. This works exactly the same, but we use the negative symbol rather than the plus. And we can use this with our number example from below by doing the opposite with subtraction. Let's remove this second get element by ID and replace the forename with the value of number 1. Save and refresh, and we now have the new value of 10. So just to recap, what we've done here is we've taken the number 1, which is 15. We've then taken away the value of 5 to give us 10, and the new value of 10 has been reassigned to number 1. We also have multiply, exactly the same. We can change this, refresh, and we have the value of 75. We can also use divide, which is the forward slash. So this is 15 divided by 5, which will reassign number 1 to be equal to 3. An interesting one is this last one we can see here, which is the % symbol. This % symbol is the remainder assignment after the division. So what this is doing here, we have our number 1 and our number 2, which is the result of 15 divided by 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times, and therefore there is no remainder. So if we were to save this, this would be a remainder value of 0. But what about if we change one of these numbers? Let's say 4. Now 4 goes into 15 3 times, with the remainder of 3. Another type of operator which we have is comparison. Currently we know when we are setting variables just like these ones, when we use a single equals, we assign the value over on the right to the value over on the left. So here, number 1 was originally 15, and now if we set this equal to number 2, this should now be the value of 4. But sometimes this can look a little bit strange for beginners, because if we were to read this as a beginner, this may look like we are checking if number 1 is equal to number 2. As we know this is not the case, this will assign number 2 to be equal to number 1, but if we did want to compare if these two values are the same, we do this with the double equals. We can then store this inside of a value, let's say result, and then output this to the browser, save and refresh, and we'll see the value is a boolean of false. We know this is false because number 1 is equal to 15 and number 2 is equal to 4. We can also do the exact opposite, which is to add an exclamation mark inside of here, and this will check if the values are not equal. You will find this a lot of times with JavaScript. If we use the exclamation mark, this will do the opposite of the original case. So save this, refresh, and the opposite of course is true. Something however to watch out for is if we are comparing two different data types. So for example, if both of these were 5, but one of these 5s was surrounded inside of the quotations to turn this into a string. For this example, it doesn't matter if we're using the single or the double quotations. And let's change this back to the equals and see what the result is inside the browser. If we refresh this, we see this is a value of true. Even though we have a string of 5 and a number of 5, the double equals will only check the values and not the data types. So number 1 and number 2 is considered to be equal, even though 1 is a string and 1 is a number. However though, if we did want to also check the value and the data type, there is a way we can do this using the triple equals. The triple equals means strict equality. So save this, refresh, and now since they have different data types, this now returns a false value. If we are using the strict equality just like this, we can also still use the exclamation mark just like before to return the exact opposite. So change this to an exclamation mark, and now if we refresh the browser, this is the opposite value of true. Comparison like this is often combined with if statements, which we'll again cover later, but some other comparison operators include the less than and the greater than symbols, which are the left and right arrows. We did briefly look at these in a previous video, so all we need to do is we can change our two values to be different, and let's first check if number 1 is greater than number 2. We know this is true, so we expect to see this inside the browser. The opposite is the less than symbol, which of course will return the value of false. And finally, the last thing we want to take a look at in this video is we can also combine this less than and greater than symbols with the equals. So we can check if number 1 is less or equal to number 2. This one will be false, but we can change these variables to be the same. These are both equal, so now this should be a value of true. And we also have access to the greater or the equal to version as well. And operators like this are useful for things such as games, where we can check if a player's health is 0 or less, which will then end the game. Next, we'll stick with the subject of operators, but this time we'll take a look at logical and arithmetic.